If you're serving in the military or know anyone who is serving, stick around and learn how to plan for a military retirement. Welcome to Retirement Revealed. I'm your host, Jeremy Keil, and we're here to turn your retirement savings into retirement income. Today, we're talking with General Michael Meese about how to plan for a military retirement. We've had a few current and former service members on the show previously, but none as high ranking as General Meese. So I'm going to say, welcome to the show, sir.
Well, happy to be here, Jeremy.
Yeah, you got it. And your organization reached out to us about having you on because you've got a really unique area that you help service members, active duty retirees. I'm going to ask you to talk about that. But for anyone else who has yet to serve, hasn't served in the military, I want you to stick around too, because you're going to learn a lot of different things about kind of the process of retirement. And I hope it gives you a good appreciation of the ways that others have served in the military and kind of the things that they're facing. You asked me to call you Mike, so I'll do that from here on out, Mike. But tell us more about yourself and specifically what prompted you to join the military.
Well, thanks very much, Jeremy. I actually grew up in California and went to high school in the San Diego area. Everybody there tended to be Navy oriented, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life, but thought I would be involved in leadership in one way or another. And so thought going to the military academy at West Point would be good. At that time, I was dating this girl, so figured I would just go there for 5 years, which was the commitment. When you go to a service academy, leave the service, and then go back to California. As it turned out, I liked it and stayed in as long as I was having fun, which turned out to be 32 years in the Army. The girl that I was dating at the time, we've now been married for 40 years. And so that worked out as well. And moved around with the Army several different times and then retired. And when I retired, I joined the current organization, the American Armed Forces Mutual Aid Association, which is the oldest nonprofit that takes care of the military and veterans with financial products and independence and those kinds of things.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I'm a member of USAA. I was telling you earlier how I was part of the ROTC, wasn't able to go active duty, but through that, I was a member of USAA. So then when I came across AAFMAA, I'm assuming there's how should we call it from here on out?
Probably easiest to call it AAFMAA.
AAFMAA. Well, excellent.
Yep.
Yeah, I just thought it was a great organization when I was looking into it. So I appreciate you coming on. You mentioned leadership and West Point. We had a recent podcast guest, Chris Kalinda. I don't know if you recognize that name at all.
I know Chris very well. He and I served in Afghanistan together. He's a great leader and is now involved in a variety of leadership aspects. So I'm glad that you've had him on, and it speaks to the stature of your program if you've had both Chris and I on your podcasts.
I'll take it. Yeah, I ran across Chris just from a news article about how he biked 1,000 miles, more than 1,000 miles, to honor 6 of his service members who had fallen. And he's local to Milwaukee, just like I am. So it was a great connection. I was curious if you knew him or heard of him. I thought I'm going to do this live, ask you live to see where it went. So that's awesome. That's great news. Wonderful. Well, tell me a little bit more about AAFMAA, because it does a lot of things.
It's really a sort of an interesting, unique organization. We speak in Milwaukee. It was born out of the Midwest. Back in the Old West days, if any service, when the Army was settling the West, if any service member was killed, at those times soldiers, there was nothing really to take care of the families. And so that's where the tradition of passing the hat came in. They'd pass the hat, whatever money went into the hat, that's what they would give to the widow. And that's what she had to live off of when somebody was killed on the battlefield. Well, at the Battle of Little Bighorn, when Custer and the 7th Cavalry were wiped out in 1876, there was nobody to pass the hat, nobody to pass the hat to. So the Army at the time put together a mutual insurance organization called the Army Mutual Aid Association, AAMAA. And back in 1879, people would pay $2 a month. And if anybody died, the widow would receive $200. And over the past 144 years, we've grown that into an organization that has over 100,000 people that are protected with our insurance, other aspects of it, including mortgages and financial planning and wealth management, and over $24 billion of insurance in force, not as a charity, but as a mutual organization with military people taking care of other military people.
Yeah, I love that idea of the mutual organization. I've got some connections through a mutual organization called Thriving Financial. So they're a fraternal. And I've got a friend of mine who's part of a fraternal, a mutual aid organization that's made up only of We Energies employees. They're actually the smallest fraternal society, mutual aid organization like that out there in the U.S. Thrivent is the biggest one. They're both headquartered in Wisconsin. And my friend Joe just loves to talk about just the benefit of these mutual aid organizations, because I think that's a bit of what America was founded on, is let's help each other out. And the word mutual and aid, I mean, you can't get more helping each other out than that right there. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, we concentrate on taking care of people, the survivors of service members who either die on active duty or die many years later after they're retired. And so that's how we get involved with issues like military retirement, the survivor benefit plan, and all of the other kinds of important issues to take care of our military.
Yeah. And those are good, important issues that are relevant, whether you work with a place like USA I mentioned, or AAFMAA that you work with, or hey, even giving me a call, right? What's important is learning a lot of the benefits that are out there. And I'll just say, if whether you're in the military or not, you probably have benefits. You probably have some sort of packet that tells you all the different benefits. And when I get a hold of things like that from our clients, people we're working with, it's just amazing what we find in there that you're just not aware of, because you got your job to do, you got your life to live. And it's just we want anyone, whether they're in the military or not, to make use of all the benefits that they have. So look into that. Look, the first thing you got to do is ask your HR, whether it's military or not, for your total benefits packet, and look at things that are called summary plan descriptions. They'll tell you a lot about the different benefits you have available while you're working and going into retirement. But here we are talking about retirement, military retirement. Let's go through a few questions I had for you. One of them is just, how does the military retirement system work?
Great question. And I'll describe it the way it always traditionally has, and then tell you how it's updated and changed in the last 5 years. But the military retirement system was designed to have people retire after approximately 20 years. So it used to be, and this is how most people that you know that are military retirees, you're not entitled to retirement until you've served 20 years. And then at 20 years, you are eligible for a base payment of equal to 50% of your base pay. So if you retire at exactly at 20 years, you'd get 50% of what your average of the last 3 years payments are. If you stay on each additional year, you get a little bit more. All the way up to 30 years, you would get 75% of your pay. And there's very few people, unless you're a general officer or a senior sergeant major, that go beyond 30 years. But if you went beyond 30 years, all the way up to 40 years, you would actually retire on 100% of your base pay if you served that long. So it's a pretty generous defined benefit retirement plan that individuals get, but they have to have served 20 years.
And 20 years exactly. You cut out a day early, that doesn't quite count.
That's right. People want to hang on with those kind of golden handcuffs. Yeah. Now, I'll tell you how it's been modified in just a minute. What they realized was a lot of people would join the military, serve for 4, 5, 6, 10 years, and then they leave and they don't have any retirement benefits. And so that's why in 2018, Congress changed the law slightly. They made the defined benefit plan slightly less advantageous in that at 20 years, you retire with only 40% of your pay, or 60% of your pay at 75 years. But they actually provide a defined contribution plan like people have in their 401k, where they will match automatically. They'll give you 1%, and they'll match up to 5% of your savings, so that you can enter the military, put away 5%, and the government will match that 5% in a 401k type plan.
Yeah, that 401k type plan. I think you're referring to the Thrift Savings Plan. We've got a good number. I'm from Maryland, I suppose. My dad was in the military as well, so we kind of moved around a little bit, not as much as some, but a lot of my friends and people I know are in Maryland. So we've got a lot of federal workers that I know. And being here in Milwaukee, when you're a federal worker, they just love their ears perk up when all of a sudden they know that I understand the TSP and kind of
The thrift
things
savings
along those lines.
very well. It's a great, fairly low cost way to passively invest in the 5 different funds or the life cycle funds. And you're exactly right, Jeremy. That's where if the automatic contribution from the government of 1% or the matching contributions of up to 5% go into that thrift savings plan, which then the individuals could get like any other 401k when they turn 59 and a half or at the other various events that happen in their lives.
Yeah, that's right on. I'm just going to ask you to maybe summarize a bit on that TSP. What is the Thrift Savings Plan, the TSP, and tell me more about how it works.
Yeah, the thrift savings plan is the government's equivalent of a retirement plan for both federal employees as well as those in the military. And you can set aside money that goes in there, again, depending upon your role in the federal government. For people who came into the Army after 2018, into the military after 2018, they will match up to 5%. People like me that were in the military well before that, when I was in the Army, you could just contribute to it. There were no matching funds. But in any case, it is a passive set of funds where it can go into anyone. The general approach is 5 different kinds of funds. They have stable value funds, a government fund. They have a bond fund, which they refer to as the fixed income fund. They have a small cap fund. They have a large cap fund, and they have an international fund. And you can divide your investment up into any one of those funds. Or what many people do is they choose the life cycle fund, where you pick your retirement date, let's say 2050, you put it in that life cycle fund, and it will automatically rebalance.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing that. It's funny, I've run into some people sometimes, they say, I don't know about these L funds. I like the other ones better. I say, well, the L funds, right, the life cycle funds, known as the L funds, are only made up of those 5 other funds. It's just a mixture. And those lifestyle L funds and the TSP, those are just a mixture that changes over time to match up the year that you're planning on retirement or planning on needing the money.
Yeah, it's exactly, Jeremy. It's like when you go through the buffet, the L fund just divides up the parts on your plates of how many from the G fund, F fund, I fund, S fund, and C fund happen to be on that plate based upon what some pretty smart financial advisors think that you should have if you're 10 years from retirement, 15 years from retirement, 30 years from retirement, the same kinds of things that you talk to people about on the show. And it allows you to automatically rebalance the way financial experts would want you to. So if you have some expertise, you can adjust it any way you want. If you don't have that expertise, I think relying on the experts and the life cycle funds is what a lot of people do with their thrift savings plan.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned earlier about how a lot of times AAFMAA comes in and helps widows, widowers, families. And that's going to come into a few other terms I just want to get out there and make sure people are aware of and they're looking into it. But I'm going to ask you, what is SGLI?
SGLI is the Service Members Group Life Insurance. And everybody who joins the military they don't have to be enrolled, but basically they're automatically enrolled, and you have to go to a lot of effort to not be enrolled. And it's a very good program where you get $500,000 of life insurance, and the current price of that is $30 a month, which is very competitive compared with others. And it's particularly competitive when you have it at any age without any underwriting. So the reason why it's competitive that way is the entire military is thrown into this pile. So you have a bunch of very young, healthy, fit 18-year-olds that are getting up every morning doing PT, combined with a few older folks that are in their 40s or 50s that would not get insurance that inexpensively, but they've been paying in for a long period of time. So it protects service members while they are in the service. Importantly, when they retire from military service or when they leave military service, that service members group life insurance ends 120 days after they leave the service. So it's very important that they work with either AAFMAA or some other organization to get insurance that replaces that SGLI.
Yeah, that's my next question is really, how do you switch to VGLI when you leave the military?
Well, you have to apply for it, which is very important. And if you apply for it within 240 days after you leave the military, you can get that VGLI without a medical exam. So somebody who especially has any health conditions, it's very important to apply for VGLI within the 240 days.
Yeah, that's those are terms that I kind of grew up with my dad being in the Army. But just those, what you've already said to me so far, I've been a financial advisor for 20 years, and just I needed to bring someone on like you to be on the show to just highlight the expertise that's needed, kind of the nuances of retiring from different places, and the idea of here's what happens with your life insurance. There's deadlines. This is why we focus so much on retirement. There's one big deadline for a lot of things. And here's one of them where if you need the life insurance, you better do it within the first 240 days there. I'm thinking you want to prepare for it ahead of time.
Yeah, the huge advantage of VGLI is just what I said. You could have recently diagnosed with a cancer diagnosis, and you will still be able to get VGLI. The big disadvantage of VGLI, on the other hand, is because they have to accept everyone, the price of VGLI can be substantially higher. In fact, if you're in your 50s, the rates will go up almost 10 times more than when you were paying when you were in the service. So that's why it's even more important as you are retiring or as you're leaving military service to look, if you're reasonably healthy, just in fair health or better, to look at other organizations, whether it's Thrivent, whether it's AAFMAA, whether it's, as you mentioned, USAA or State Farm or SelectQuote or somebody. Go ahead while you still have that opportunity to get VGLI within those 240 days. Go out and get an underwritten policy from AAFMAA, and then we will be able to tell you what you qualify for and how much lower the rates are. In general, when we compare individuals who get insurance from us with what they would have paid from VGLI, it's almost 75% less in many cases. And so that's why you definitely want to shop around for insurance as you're transitioning out of the military to be sure that you have that when you lose SGLI.
Yeah, it just shows the power of what insurance is for. Insurance is a grouping of a lot of people together to kind of pay in and help each other out when you truly need it. And there's a power in there of being healthy. If they understand that the grouping is healthier than average, then they want to reflect that in the price. And a mutual aid organization like AAFMAA is going to definitely reflect that in a lower price if you qualify. But also shows the power of you got that great backup, right? If you go through and you can't get it, figure that out in the first 240 days, and then you realize that price is a deal. That's actually that you might say that's a high price, but it's a deal because you can't get it anywhere else. It's worth it for you.
Absolutely.
Oh, excellent. Good. Well, you talked about some specific things. We're going to get a little broader, and I'm going to ask, what are the key factors for service members to consider about retirement?
Well, I think one of the key factors is that they need to think through not only what do they need to retire on financially, but what will their family be dependent upon. As I mentioned, the military retirement is a defined benefit plan. So it's paid out from the government. It goes up every year based upon COLA, the cost of living allowance that Congress increases that military retired pay. But the important thing for retirees to remember is when you die, your retired pay stops. It's not like a 401k that necessarily transfers to your spouse or your family. That's why in the 1970s, the military came up with what's known as the Survivor Benefit Plan, which, as you mentioned, the decisions that you make when you retire, the Survivor Benefit Plan is one of the most important decisions that you have to make. and you make it one time as you retire, you can elect upon retirement to pay 6.5% of your retired pay back into the government. And if you do that, when you die, the government will continue to pay part of your retired pay, 55% of your retired pay, to your spouse for the rest of his or her life. And so that's a really important decision, that if your spouse is dependent upon your retired pay, it is very important for you either to have substantial life insurance, substantial investments, or to enroll in the survivor benefit plan.
Yeah, that's a big piece of it, because it's not just about you, it's about the both of you. It's not about just you as maybe a 37-year-old retiring. It's about you as a 93-year-old at some point in time. And the decisions you make then are huge, which is why just these big one-time decisions about your life insurance, about how you take your retirement, are just so impactful. And you need to prepare for that ahead of time.
That is very, very important.
Good. Well, I got a few fun questions I want to ask you, but before that, I'm curious. Tell me, what have I not asked you that I perhaps should have?
Well, the only other part that I think is very important is anybody who has been in military service for a long period of time probably has developed some health conditions. And you see this a lot with our veterans. It's always very important as you retire to get a complete comprehensive physical from the military. And then you can take that over to the Department of Veterans Affairs. And the Department of Veterans Affairs can take care of you from a healthcare perspective if you have anything that went wrong with you while you were in the military, as well as there's a pension and compensation exam where you actually can get VA disability pay if there are anything that went wrong with you that either was caused by military service or exacerbated from military service. So I strongly encourage not just retirees, but anybody who's a veteran to be sure to get a military and then VA medical exam so that they can take care of all of those conditions. Each of the people who have served in the military have sacrificed a lot, both in their time as well as sometimes in their bodies. And it's important. The government has a very good program. I work closely with the Department of Veterans Affairs on some issues in the past, and they are very good. Sometimes it's a challenge to get through the bureaucracy, but once you get through the bureaucracy, they're very good at taking care of veterans and making sure that we can do what President Lincoln wanted us to do, to take care of those that have served in war and their families as well.
Yeah, that's great advice. We'll make sure to highlight that piece of it too. I'm curious, actually, you retired from the military. Now you're working with AAFMAA. How do you plan to spend your retirement? What's your thoughts on your own retirement?
Well, I don't know. It's a lot of fun working with AAFMAA and continue to stay involved in sports. And, when to give you an idea of how much life changes, when I retired 10 years ago, I had 3 kids. I had no grandchildren. Now all 3 kids are married. And I have 9 grandchildren. So spending time with my grandchildren is really a lot of fun.
That's an awesome way to go. I hear that a lot. And that's something I'm trying to ask more of is when you're on the show and you're close to retirement or thinking about it, what's your plan? Because I think sometimes people don't have a plan. They just want to kind of get out of whatever is in right now. And I think you've got a mission already. You went from one mission to another mission, and whenever you've got an idea of what the next few years will look like whenever that gets to that point.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had something when I saw your rank. There's one little acronym that just hopped in my head because I've heard it for growing up. But for those that aren't familiar with the military, tell me, what does "Be My Little Girl" mean? What does that mean?
Well, that's it's keeping track of what the various ranks are. Brigadier General is the lowest rank. Major General is the next rank, Lieutenant General is the next rank, and then General Officer is the highest rank. So that's how it you sometimes keep track of that. It does get confusing because somehow although a major outranks a lieutenant general outranks a major general,
right.
Which can be confusing unless you have a mnemonic like you just related, Jeremy.
Yeah, I thought of that, and of course, you said brigadier is the lowest rank. I don't know if I would call that the lowest rank, but And everyone just seems to be a general when you meet them, which is great.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I've got one final question for you, but before that, tell us what's the best way for people to reach out to you or perhaps to AAFMAA?
Yeah, the best way is actually we've got a lot of information on our website. Whether you want to reach us or just consume some of the great stuff in our learning hub is at afmaa.com. That's www.aafmaa.com. And you can also Google my name, Michael Meese, and that usually shows up there. And we're happy to help any service member, whether it's on insurance, financial questions, survivor assistance, transition questions. There's a great transition guide there that people can download when they're getting out of the military that covers many of the topics that you and I have discussed, Jeremy.
Well, that's perfect. I think it's under the resources tab. I'm going to make sure to link to that directly to get that transition guide. Perfect. And of course, if anyone wants more ideas on how to make their retirement great for me, go ahead right now. Just click that subscribe button. We'll keep on giving you more great retirement ideas, great guests like Mike here. All right, final question for you, Mike. Tell us something about yourself that few people know about. And remember, this podcast is rated clean.
Well, no, I probably most people don't know. I mentioned that I grew up in California, was in San Diego. People in the Midwest are concerned about football. In San Diego, the biggest thing was water polo and swimming. So I played water polo in my senior year. We were 16-0, the CIF champions in water polo. In fact, our swim team was excellent. You may have heard of the diver Greg Louganis. Greg Louganis was actually in my high school and was diving on our swimming and diving team, and he had already won a silver medal in the Olympics. So kind of a neat way to focus on swimming when everybody else in high school tended to focus on football.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. And thank you for coming on the show. I've had a lot of fun learning from you and of course, getting to share that with everyone in the military or someone knows someone in the military to check out the things Mike talked about so you can learn more about retiring from the military.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Great to be on your show.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening to the Retirement Reveal podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you will feel better about your money and you will make better money decisions.